Kelley Ford from K Ford Rankings. Big Ten fan, is got a degree from Ohio University. Also, associate commissioner at the Horizon League. And I saw a lot of what he's done. I've seen, I'm very much, is it rankings or ratings? Ratings, okay. I've seen a lot of graphics and data, and I love that kind of stuff. And so yesterday evening I'm watching, it popped up, here, Garrett, put this up first. This is the top 25, top 30 based on his ratings. That includes Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. At the top, all the way down, you see at number 30, you see TCU, SMU just above them, KU, et cetera. A lot of Big 12 teams involved there. And then I saw someone that took what he has, his ratings, and they simulated the season 15 times. Here it is here. 41 teams made the college football playoff. 6 teams won a national title. 10 made the national championship game. 20 teams made the semifinals, and on and on and on. We'll go to the other part of that graphic later. We're joined by Kelley Ford from K Ford Ratings here with us on 365 Sports. Kelley, you just basically got involved with this. Is this something that's in your background? I know you're involved, as you said, as a fan, but when did you get into like the ratings part, the analytical, the data part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's going to be a lot of fun here talking college football, as it always is. So I've always been a huge college football fan. For as long as I can remember, it's been my favorite sport. And then I've also, again, for as long as I can remember, had a knack for numbers and math, science, statistics. That's always kind of been a strong suit of mine. And so for a long time, I really enjoyed the content put out by Bill Connolly, who's famous for SC+, Brian Fremeau, FEI, and, other predictive models out there like ESPN's SPI, right? That gets a lot of publicity. Mm-hmm. So I've always found it fascinating. And, in 2019, or it was really before 2019, but in 2019, I decided, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to publish my own, put them out there for people to consume. And that's what it started as. It was just fun, a different way to view college football at a 30,000-foot view. And it's been a lot of fun over the last 4 or 5 years getting into it and kind of growing a following, if you will, on social media. And everything that I do is stemming from my power ratings. And you talked about the teams at the top there, the top 30. Every single piece of content I do uses the power ratings as an engine. And by using that, we're able to do all sorts of things, project how a season's going to go, how a game's going to go, a conference race, or the national championship race. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to just kind of seeing where it goes.
So, Kelley, based on, I believe I'm looking at the right slide, you are pretty high on the Oregon Ducks. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I've got Oregon number 3 right now in my preseason version 2 power ratings. I think this might be the best Oregon team we've seen in quite some time.
So tell us how you put all this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the preseason, I've got 3 main inputs. You're looking at returning production, and that's first and foremost kind of the most important thing. That's most heavily weighted in the model. What are you bringing back from last year? What are you adding via the transfer portal? What are you losing via the transfer portal and to graduation, the pro draft, all those things? And then what has your program power rating been in recent years? How strong was Baylor a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? How well have teams recruited out of the high school ranks in the last couple of years? And again, you're weighting the most recent years most heavily. But guys, I've had to reevaluate and kind of rerun some back testing and figure out what's the right weighting, what's the right mix of these components, because how you build a roster in 2024 college football is much different than how you built a roster back in 2019 when I started doing this publicly. So spent a lot of time earlier this summer figuring out what's the appropriate weights there. And then once we get into the season, we start phasing out the preseason component, and it gets replaced with the in-season data, which, of course, is much more informative. But that's really what it boils down to. Every single team is judged on the same factors, the same components, and then we're able to break it down not just at the team level, but, the offensive units, the defensive units, and to a lesser degree, special teams, which become, more informative as the year goes on.
You have Oklahoma at 8. And I would think that most people are probably a little bit leery about how they're going to hit the SEC in their first year with how, last year they had a good football team, but a little bit like not so sure about them, unlike what a lot of people feel like about Texas, if they're being honest. Why Oklahoma at 8?
So I'll be right there with a lot of those people you just talked about. I'm a little leery of having them at number 8. Oklahoma is a team that if I'm looking at my top 10, they're the one that sticks out. And I say, man, I'm not sure if Kelley Ford, the person, necessarily that Oklahoma should be there. But K Ford rating's the model, again, based on the inputs and the factors that we were talking about that all teams are judged on. This is a top 15 offense. It's a top 15 defense. They were number 10 last year, so a good team. They are transitioning, of course, into the SEC, which is going to be tough. They have the 6th most difficult schedule in the entire country by my number. Even though this is the number 8 power-rated team in my preseason version 2 model, I'm still only projecting an 8-4 record for Oklahoma because that schedule is so tough. So, again, the power rating, I always talk about this as it's one data point that you can use to evaluate a team. It gives a good 30,000-foot view of the landscape of college football, and then you can drill down into the team. But no model, including my own, is perfect. Every model has blind spots. There are things that, intangible things in and around a program, whether it's about a coach, whether it's about, the infrastructure of a program, whatever it is, that a model can't capture. We can't quantify with math. And so no model's perfect. Everybody's got blind spots. Everybody's got outliers. I am wondering if Oklahoma might be an outlier for me in what I call the positive direction, meaning Oklahoma is more highly power rated than they might end up being come the end of the year. But that's what the model says, and I've learned to trust the model at least at a 30,000-foot view. We can bicker about, a spot here or there, but over time it's proven to be pretty reliable, and that's where I've got Oklahoma. But Kelley Ford, the person, is certainly sharing in some of those reservations. I'm very curious to see how year one in the SEC goes for the Oklahoma Sooners.
You have Notre Dame at 7. They seem like they're flying under the radar. Coach Marcus Freeman coming back yet another year as he tries to put this program in a nice spot. Were they higher than you thought? And but let me ask you, when it comes to these ratings, this is emotionless based, right? This is based on whatever the numbers spit out.
Correct. Yeah. So I do everything I can to remove all human biases from this, and the goal here is to make it 100% objective. And so that's what we're constantly trying to do. I'm constantly working on what I call refining the edges, smoothing out the edges of the model, trying to tamp down the effective outliers. All of those kind of terms that nobody wants to talk about. That's what's going on behind the scenes. You asked about Notre Dame, and they're number 7 in my power rating. That really, it's not surprising to me, like Oklahoma at number 8 for me, because if you look at Notre Dame on offense, defense, and I know they're bringing in, a new quarterback with Riley Leonard there from Duke, but it's top 10 on both sides of the ball. They've been a top 10 team in my power rating 3 of the last 4 years. So this is a program that has, in recent years, really performed at a high level. There's nothing wrong with their recruiting, of course, at Notre Dame, nor will there ever probably be. And then you look at the schedule, and that's what stands out to me this year about Notre Dame, because in most years, Notre Dame plays a pretty difficult schedule, and they're a polarizing team. A lot of people either love Notre Dame or hate them. Very few people are kind of neutral. And so depending on what your viewpoint is of Notre Dame, you either you lean into that or you really try to kind of reject that notion. But the reality is, from a numbers standpoint, Notre Dame's schedule in most years is pretty difficult. This year, it is not. It's number 58 out of 68, Power 4 teams. So it's the 11th easiest Power 4 schedule this year. There is only one game on the entire schedule in which the Irish right now are assigned less than a 65% win expectancy by my numbers. That is week 1, right out of the gate, on the road at Texas A&M. Of course, you've got Riley Leonard at a new school going up against his former coach at Duke, at a new school there, Mike Elko, the head coach at Texas A&M now. So that's the only game, though. If Notre Dame gets by that one, my numbers are going to favor them, at least for now, in every single game the rest of the way. I've got a 43% chance that Notre Dame wins at least 11 games, and that is the number that the math suggests Notre Dame needs to get to be in that at-large conversation. Of course, the Irish can't earn an AQ. They have to be an at-large, one of those 7. The reality is, I believe that even with this schedule, if Notre Dame finishes 10-2, the committee will put them in. It's the Notre Dame brand. They reach that 10-win mark. Neither of those things should matter, in my opinion, because everything needs to be contextualized. However, the reality is I believe the committee will put them in, and I've got a 76% chance right now that Notre Dame gets to at least 10 wins. That week 1 game is huge for both the Irish and the Aggies, and I'm really excited for it.
It's a great. You haven't seen them play very often. That's what we might start seeing more and more of because of the condensed or larger, I guess not condensed, larger conferences. That's what we're hoping to see in the conference play.
As far as the Big 12 specifically goes, you got to go all the way to 18 in Utah to see the first Big 12 school, and that's part of the price of losing Texas and Oklahoma, I understand. But there's a gaggle of teams all right there. I mean, K-State at 19 right behind Utah, Oak State at 24, Arizona 25, KU 26, TCU 30. Kelley, just what do you think separates Utah and kind of Kansas State a little bit more from the rest? And what do your numbers tell you about just the conference itself heading into this season?
Yeah, so the Big 12 Conference, and I've talked about this before too, it might be, and I think it is going to be, my favorite Power 4 race this year. And that's because there are so many contenders in this conference. Objectively speaking, what the Big 12 lacks in terms of elite power-rated teams, because you touched on it, the top two power-rated are Utah at number 18 and Kansas State at number 19. So there is nobody in the top 17 from the Big 12. So what they lack in elite power-rated teams, the Big 12 more than makes up for in really, really good power-rated teams, which, as you noted, there are a handful in the top 30, and there's a lot more there just outside the top 30 as well. Guys, I've got 10 teams in this conference that if you wanted to make a case to me that they have a path to Arlington, I would listen, and I'd probably agree with you. I think the conference is that deep. Now, for each of those 10 teams, after you're done talking, saying, here's why, UCF can make it to Arlington, I'll turn right around and say, and here's why UCF won't make it to Arlington. I think that there is such a compelling case to be made for upwards of 10 teams in this conference. You talked about Kansas State and Utah. Those are the two right now that are standing out as the favorites. I've got Kansas State and Utah with 6.5 and 6.4 projected conference wins, respectively. Number 3 on that list, and it's actually really a three-way tie down to the 10th of a win. Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma State, all at 5.6. But again, there's another, 5 teams that are within a game of that. But Kansas State and Utah have, the balance on both sides of the ball. If I look at Kansas State, they're number 19 on offense, they're number 26 on defense. You look at Utah, the defense as it has been under Kyle Whittingham for a long time, projecting to be top 10. I mean, this might be the best defense that Utah's had in the CFB era. That's how good I think they can be. The offense is number 36, but of course we're expecting a bounce back this year with Cam Rising coming back. It really lagged last year without him, at least from their standards. So really, just those two teams, what they're bringing back, the efficiencies on each side of the ball. And then also when you look at the schedules that they face, they are the two easiest conference schedules. So when you strip away the non-conference, just conference games, these are the two teams that have the easiest conference schedule in the Big 12. Now, part of that's inherent because they are the top power-rated teams and you're not going to play yourself. So part of that's to be expected. But I do think it's worth noting that from a schedule difficulty standpoint, these two seem to have gotten the best draw, at least based on my version 2 power ratings here this preseason. Of course, all of that will change on a weekly basis as we get going.
All right, so I said last night I was watching your feed. I've been keeping up with it. And then at Bucks in 62, then simulated, based on your numbers, the season 15 times. Here is the list. Garrett, do you actually have the list? I know it's kind of a wide list, a long list that we put up on a graphic before we ask Kelley a follow-up. Okay, it's very small, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, this is the one when I asked about Oregon initially. Yeah. This is what I had seen. Yeah,
there you go. Oregon in the 60. How many was it that he did? How many simulations did he do? 15 times. Oregon, out of the 15 simulations, won the national title 4 times. So did Georgia, Ohio State 3 times, Notre Dame twice, and then Penn State and Texas. Each of them got 1. And it seems like, first of all, Oregon should be very, very good. They were really good last year, and now they have Dylan Gabriel to help make up for the loss of Bo Nix, and who knows, might be better. We'll see. And, man, it still seems to me that you hear about Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and yet here you are with this being simulated 15 times, and there are the Ducks and Dan Lanning.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me dive into Oregon, a little bit more here, because that was the first team we asked about, and I didn't fully know the format of how this was going, so I didn't give you a whole lot on Oregon. So my apologies.
That's okay.
Ducks, coming into this year, I've got them power rated number 3, which is where they were to end last year as well, and it's the highest power rating this team has had since 2014, when I actually had the Ducks finish number 1 in my year-end power ratings. Of course, they did not win the national championship, but they did end the year from a power rating standpoint number 1. The offense last year was number 2. You talked about Dylan Gabriel coming in and some other flashy pieces too. I'm projecting this to be the best offense in the country. The defense also improved, if you can believe it, because last year they were number 15. Now I'm projecting number 14. There is not a single game on Oregon's schedule this year in which my numbers assign less than a 59% win expectancy. That 59%, of course, week 7 at home when Ohio State, who I do have number 2 in the power rating. So a better power-rated team. But because the game is in Eugene, my numbers are favoring Oregon in that game, at least for now. So Oregon's favored in every single game, 22% chance to go 12-0, 61% chance to win at least 11 games. And then 10, that's the number I think is the magic number for them to be an at-large consideration based on the schedule they're playing. 88% chance to reach the playoff via the at-large path at a minimum. That is up there with Georgia and Ohio State as the top 3 with regard to their chances to be in that CFB conversation. So it's no surprise that when this was simulated by Buxton62, and he did this last year as well, and it was a fun exercise, so he said, can I do it again? I said, absolutely, just shoot me the results and I'll post them here. And so it's no surprise that Oregon pops up all over this. I think this is going to be a really good team. If we strip away the results of the 15 Sims and just look at what if the season played out as my numbers are projecting to the letter, to the T, which of course they will not. Teams are going to overperform. Teams are going to underperform. But what if it played out exactly as my numbers suggested? I would have Oregon actually being the number 5 seed in the playoffs because they would be 12-2 with a loss in the Big Ten championship game to Ohio State. If they were able to beat Ohio State in what I expect to be a rematch in Indianapolis, then of course they would be number 2 behind just Georgia for me in the playoff. But I have Oregon number 5, kind of my top 12 teams that get into my simulated playoff, if you will, if we ran the season, 10,000 times and we took the aggregate or expected result. Georgia, SEC champs would be number 1. Ohio State, Big Ten champs would be number 2. Florida State, ACC champs would be number 3, of course, because we're using the CFP seeding principles as well. And Utah, out of the Big 12, would be my number 4 team and get those buys. The teams in that fill in after that: Oregon at number 5, Texas at number 6, Alabama 7, Penn State 8, LSU 9, Michigan 10, Ole Miss 11, and Boise State would get the G5 spot at number 12 for me. So that's what that looks like for me. That's on the website as well, k4ratings.com. But certainly happy to talk more in depth about the 15 Sims too, if you guys have more there.
No, yeah, and Kelley, we got to move on for another guest that we have coming up, the voice of UCF athletics. But the G5's the highest ranked you had. Memphis, Tulane, and then you mentioned Boise State are the ones competing for that particular spot, and of course that can change. I want to get the next time we get you on, most deserving, what if, all of that. We'll get into that with you, but thanks for your time. Keep up the great work. Stay in touch.
Absolutely, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
It's the letter K, Ford, ratings.com. You can go to the website. I have it now pinned at the top of numerous different sites that I have. Again, the data, how he feeds it, and then the possibility of, like you said, this is not going to go according to plan. It never does. Although some of these schools look like they'll probably be a part of that mix at the end of the year.
Yeah.